everybody, welcome back to Taji's World of Books and welcome to what I've been reading so far this week. Hey you guys, so I thought I would jump on really quick because I want to be consistent with my uploading and share with you the things that I have been reading so far this week. Because my Friday video, I want to make sure that I get up to you, but I want to keep that as a whole series, and so I'm going to save those books for then. So today I'm just going to share with you what I've been reading so far. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay. So I'm going to continue to talk about Karen Rose because I'm loving her. I'm loving her so much. And several of you have asked me about it. Several of you have commented that you're so happy that I'm reading this. And I have to say, like, she is a fantastic author. So many of you, like myself, have wanted to step out into the thriller genre and the suspense genre, but have been a little bit concerned about stepping away from romance and getting into a subspace of like gore and like really horror. And Karen Rose is not that. She is very tasteful. She's very tactful. She gives you an equal balance of romance with suspense and thriller. All of her books in this series, the romantic suspense series, surrounds around serial killers, different serial killers that are operating mainly in the Chicago, Philadelphia, and North Carolina regions. And it's about what connects these books together are the detectives or the FBI workers or the county prosecutors or the state prosecutors that work on these cases. They then have connections with other characters, whether it be one of their siblings and it's their story, but they're all like detectives or some type of law enforcement that has worked on a previous case and now it's their turn to get a book and to get their love story. And so in essence, that's what connects the stories. And then the locale of where it's happening, whether it be Philadelphia, Chicago, so on and so forth. Okay. And so she writes really well. Like, I feel like it's like a page turner. I'm on the edge of my seat. I want to know what's happening. I have not clocked yet who the killer is. It's always like there are a lot of plot twists and there are a lot of twists and turns, and it never is what you think it's going to be. And it always is like this random delivery guy who like works at a random school and is connected to the story somehow. And it usually is, these serial killers are usually like it's a revenge plot type situation where they're getting back for past wrongs that were done to them, but now they are exacting that revenge on every person that had a hand in whatever was done to them. At least that's what the books have been about thus far. Okay, so this particular book is called Scream for Me, and this one is about Daniel Vartanian. And we saw Daniel Vartanian in the previous books because his sister Sophie, and in the last book, his brother, was involved. I don't want to say too much about it, was involved in that story. And as a result of his brother's involvement in that previous story, it then carries over into this current book. And this is so fascinating because her name is, so it's Daniel's main story, but what is the nurse's name? The nurse's name is, I believe, Alex. I believe that's her name, is Alex. I could be wrong, but I believe her name is Alex. Let me check. Yes, her name is Alex Fallon. She is a nurse. And the story starts off with her being in a situation where her mother and some family member has just committed suicide and she is left on her own. She's being put into the foster care system. She's in a wheelchair. She's quite injured from the traumatic events of her past, of what has happened to her. And as a result, when it's a foster situation, but it's a foster with extended family. So when her extended family comes to get her, her stepdad comes raging up to the hospital as they're leaving, and he's like, "You can't take her." And they're like, "You know what? The court has said that we are taking her." This is when Alex is a child. Where the court has said we're taking her and you need to step off. And he like is just this creepy guy and they don't know what's going on, but they're just like, "I don't feel good about it." And so as they leave, as they leave him, get in the car and get on the road to go back home, Alex attempts suicide. And the story the prologue ends, and then it's like 20 years later, and the story starts from there. And this book is a trip because there are several assaults that are happening where women are being assaulted and pictures are being taken of them, and it's being broadcast and sent out over news media. And it seems as though that there are pillars of the community that are involved in these grisly sexual assaults and kidnappings, and you're really trying to find out what's going on. And Daniel Vartanian is a special agent, and he is trying to figure out the culprit of these multiple murders and serial sexual acts that have been happening, but he seems to think that they are copycat situations because they're copycatting of 13-year-old murders that he investigated years before. And what he's starting to see is that those things that happened 13 years before that began in the book right before this are culminating in this story because there's more than meets the eye. There's more to this series. There's more to these murders. There is a ring of situations that are going on and multiple people that are involved in this. And all of it surrounds around Alex and false memories and memories that have been suppressed and trauma. And so they really are trying to get at what happened 13 years ago and how it connects to what's going on now. And it is fascinating. It really, really is good. And again, like I said, her books are definitely not books that you feel like you can like clock in and clock out. Because if you clock out and you're listening to the audiobook and you go back in, you go, oh shoot, now I don't know what's going on. Now I've missed it and I got to go back because I need to understand all of how these pieces connect. And you don't want to miss any of it because every piece ties to something later that's going to be significant and relevant. So again, it's really a tangled web that we weave because every character she introduces for a reason and for a purpose, and they have a piece in the bigger story. And the thing that's also interesting is that you might think, how did that character play into what's going on right now? They may not play into what's going on right now, but in the next book, they're going to play in. You know, it doesn't happen in every book she writes, but I've seen that as a theme with her. So again, like, don't think that a character is just thrown in there for no reason. Like, there's no real secondary characters. Like, your secondary characters are build ups for next books because they're going to get a book, or they're secondary characters because they have a significant role to play in this story. You just don't know it yet. And so it's just, they're so good. They're so good. Like I said, I've given them all solid 4s. They are, in terms of like equal parts romance, equal parts suspense. The romance is there. I love the story. There's no fade to black. There's like, she gets in there. You're not all up in it, but like it gets kind of spicy and sexy and cool. And it's just enough for the story. But again, it's a fascinating story and you want to know what's going on. So I love it as a palate cleanser. I think that if you have not tried these books, don't shy away. And like I said, even though they're in a series, you don't have to read them in order. You can read them at any point you can pick up any one of these books and you absolutely will know what's going on because every book is written as a standalone. Like I said, it might be nice to know how the characters connect because you'll know Daniel Vartanian. Oh, you're like, oh, I saw him in the last book. And I know his sister and I know his backstory and I know why all this is a big thing, but she explains it in here. So it's like not a big deal. But if you're a purist like me, then you read it in order. And this is the first time that I'm actually reading something really slowly and kind of taking my time and reading like not back to back because it really doesn't matter. So anyway, I highly recommend it. I love it. I'm going to pick up the next book and I probably will begin reading it at the end of this week or this weekend or something like that. So I'm really looking forward to it. So that is Scream for me. Okay, so then I read Destroyed by my girl Pepper Winters. And I absolutely loved this story. And oh my gosh, I love Pepper Winters so much. Like, she is one of my favorite authors. And I always know that I'm just gonna get it when I know what I'm getting when I'm getting into her writing. And I know it's gonna be a dark romance. I know it's gonna be twisted. I know the characters are gonna be broken. I know that it's gonna be a gray romance. It's gonna be like not a traditional path towards happiness, but it's gonna be a happiness for them. And it's always fantastic when you get to the end. And Destroyed delivered in so many ways. And it's about Hazel and a guy named Ronan. And so here's the deal. Hazel lives with her best friend, and her best friend has a quirky name. Her best friend's name is, what the heck is her best friend's? Clue. Her best friend's name is Clue. So Clue and Hazel has a daughter, and her daughter's name is Clara. And you know that there is something wrong with Clara's breathing. She has really serious asthma, and we know that Hazel Hazel comes from like the foster care system. She's been bounced around from home to home. She's had a terrible upbringing, and she really is trying to figure out life, right? And it's not going well for her. Okay, so she's trying to figure it out. And so her and Clue go to this underground fighting ring with this new guy that Clue has met that she wants to start a relationship with. And so she brings Hazel along with her. Hazel's like, fine. She's like, this is not my deal. Like, I got my daughter. Like, this is not whatever, but I'll go. So she goes to the club with Clue. And of course, when she's there, she catches the eye of this dark, brooding, dark character named Ronan. And they don't call him Ronan. They call him something else in the beginning. They call him, I can't remember what they call him, but whatever they call him, he is a broken guy, and he runs this underground fight club. And we start to learn that he is an assassin. He was trained in Russia. He's hiding it, and he's gotten away from this assassin's crew. And he's gotten away from them, but he has been trained from birth, just about, because he was stolen from his birth family to be an assassin and a murderer. And so he has no feeling whatsoever. He has no compunction about killing somebody, harming somebody, hurting somebody. He just is the darkest, brooding character ever. He just is the top of in terms of being dark and just twisted, and there's something truly wrong with him. There is. And he catches her, she catches his eye. And when he sees her, he sets his sights on her, because he's like, I feel something for the first time in a millennia, and I don't know why, and I'm going to understand and figure this out. And he starts to pursue her, and he decides he's going to take her captive, and he's going to keep her, and she's going to explain to him why she invokes this feeling in her. And she is just as dark and twisted, and she's like, you're not going to keep me, because if you try to keep me, I will take you out, buddy. So like, you better watch yourself, because she keeps a knife in her hair clip. And at one point she stabs him in the leg with her hair clip, because this dude is twisted. Some of the scenes and the intimacy between them borders on non-con situations. Like, it is just twisted. But like I said, it's a gray romance, and it is truly about two broken souls finding redemption, if redemption can ever be found, and can they be better versions of themselves, and how do they overcome darkness. And especially with Ronan, how does he stop the voices inside him that tell him to kill, 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 kill? That's all he hears, kill, 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 kill. How does he quiet them? How does he make that go away? And then, of course, there's Hazel's daughter, Clara, and the innocence of youth and what that brings to the story. And oh my God, does this pack a punch. I gave this a 5 out of 5, a 5 in terms of spice, and a 5 in terms of angst. This story is over the top and fantastic. It starts off a little bit repetitive and slow, but as it gets going, it takes off like with a bang. And by the time you get to the ending of this book, you are left reeling. It is so fantastic and so good. You are just going to absolutely love this if you can get past all the triggers. There's a lot of trigger warnings. There's a lot. Always in a Pepper Winters book, there's always going to be trigger warnings. Check out the trigger warnings. Don't go in blind. I'm not going to share them, because for those of you that are like me that like to go in blind and don't want to know much, I don't want to spoil it. But for those of you who need to know what you're going into, because when you check out the triggers, it's going to be a spoiler. So go ahead and do that for yourself. I have warned you, but I also have told you that it's going to be spectacular and that you're really going to enjoy it. So I highly recommend you check it out. And that's Pepper Winters Destroyed. So then I went on to Charity B. I love Charity B. This is the second book I've read of Charity B, and this is called Incubastard. And I loved it. It is fantastic. And it is about angels and demons and afterlife. Okay, and so it's the story of this girl, and her name is, I never remember, it's Mishka, and she lives in Portland, Oregon with her roommate. And again, it's another bouncing from foster care situation. She has just broken up with her boyfriend or fiance or whomever he is, because she caught him cheating with one of her coworkers. She's like, I'm done. I've written this off. I don't want to deal with this. Her roommate decides that she's dabbling in witchcraft. She's going to do a love spell and a sex spell, because she believes that Mishka needs to have a fuck partner, and she just needs to get laid and she'll get over it. So they do this spell and they call a demon. But like Mishka's like, that's such bullshit. It's like not gonna happen. And sure enough, the next day in comes this demon, and his name is Locke. And so Locke is like, you called me and here's the deal. And he comes from one of the realms of hell. And it's kind of cool because you see Lilith and you see Asmodeus and you see the different realms of hell. You see Lucifer. She explains her sort of breakdown of the angels and demons and Michael and like how that's a family tree and how that's all connected. So it's kind of interesting in that way. And so then it basically is the story of Locke and Micah and how they get together and what happens between the two of them. And it's spicy and steamy and angsty, and it's really a fun ride, and it's an interesting take, like I said, on angels and demon mythology, and in a way that, and she gives it a kind of a spin on it in a way that's kind of fun and fascinating. And when they finally get together, when you find out about the back history and the story, there's a plot twist. It gets really interesting and fun. It ends on an HEA. It's such a good story. It's such a good story. I loved it. I gave it a 5 overall, a 5 spice, because it is damn spicy and sexy, and I gave it a 5 in terms of angst. So check it out for sure. And then the last book that I want to talk to you about that I read that left me reeling and took me by surprise because it's a departure from what I normally read. Didn't think that I was going to love it, and I absolutely loved it, is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This book was off the chart fantastic. Okay, the writing was stellar, spectacular. She wove a fantastical story. It was so good. And it's the story of the Marsh girl who lives in North Carolina. It's set in North Carolina. It's set in the 1960s, and it spans from 1960 to 1970s. And then after, like, the epilogue tells you more about it. And it tells you, it's basically about a girl's discovery of who she is and her family and poverty and history and love of the marshlands and biology and understanding, you know, and then also differences, rejecting people for differences and labeling them and thinking about them in a certain way without taking the opportunity to get to know them, and like legends and mysteries. And it's so fascinating. Again, you have to read it because it's a murder mystery that you're trying to understand what happened to this particular character. But while you're trying to understand, so in the future, they're going back and looking at the clues to try to understand what happened in this murder. But you have to, in order to understand what happened with this murder, you have to go back and understand the story of Kaya, who is called the Marsh girl, and her story with her family. And then we can understand Chase Anderson's murder and what happened with Chase Anderson. And when Kaya opens herself up to a new life and how she is basically a kid that was just left alone in the North Carolina marshes to grow up and figure it out and to try to find, to feed herself, to live life when nobody cared about her, when nobody gave a shit whether she lived, died, or she survived or not. It was all on her to do it. And that the things that she was able to do with that humble beginning is fantastic. And so I gave this a 5. I gave it a 5 angst. And the spice, it's not a spice because that's not what it's about, but it is there for sure. It is there, but that's not what this book is about. And I think if you have any doubts about this at all, you should not. You should read this because it's fantastic. I loved it so much, and I think you will love it as well. And there were parts of this where I was crying, not sobbing, but tearing up, and other parts of it that I was just like, oh my God. And when I finished this book, I was just like, wow, I cannot believe that that's what I just read, and I missed out on that. And so I can't wait for the movie to come out, and I wanted to read this in advance of the movie because I really I didn't want it to be spoiled. I just wanted to get my take on it first, and I'm so happy that I did. And again, a departure from what I normally read, but don't shy away from it. It's so, so good, and the writing is, like I said, just absolutely stellar. So please check it out. So you guys, that is all that I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and do all the things. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you can know when I upload a new video, and come hang out with me more, and comment below. Make some suggestions about things that you want to see me read and review for you, and I'll jump on those as well. And that's all that I have for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.